A very good morning to all of you. And I hope you can hear this music that is streaming in to welcome all of us to day 2 of our conference, the ICF India Coaching Conclave 2022. Inaugurated day before evening, and a whole host of rich conversations yesterday, bringing us into this morning. I'm going to be quiet for a few moments to let this music bathe you and ground you to the richness that awaits us all as we begin together. Meantime, just share how you're feeling right now, what's bringing you here, where are you coming in from, whatever you wish to say, to really start making this a wonderful circle of people. Very good morning to all those who are checking in the chat box. And I'm going to now slowly reduce the volume of this music. Ever-evolving parenting. All of us together, friends, are here for the next 90 minutes to really immerse ourselves in what I believe is such a pertinent conversation that is taking place at the ICF India Coaching Conclave. Personally, for me, this is not a topic very commonly discussed in this kind of a forum. And I wondered why not. And so, in a way, I am both proud and grateful for the curators of this conference to bring this subject to the fore. Because isn't that where leaders are nurtured? At home, with the bedtime story, with the wonderful imagination that they wake up with, where the land is without fear. Me, as a young mother, well, not so young anymore, because now I have an 11-year-old daughter, I'm really looking forward to this conversation. So, my dear delegates, participants, let me tell you a secret. We are in competition here. If you do not hear your questions being asked to the panel, it just means I'm being selfish and asking my own very questions, right? But do keep them coming. There is a Q&A box where you can put your questions so they reach us. And of course, keep the chat alive. I can say this on behalf of the lovely panel that I'm going to just briefly introduce, that they would love to hear from you and build on what is coming up in the chat box into this fabulous discussion. Okay, so now just sit back, relax, put all your distractions away, and gift yourself this immersion into this session. First, I call upon Ms. Kiran Sethi. Kiran is a designer at heart from NID. I think that's just a profession, but I think she carries this in her heart. Two things I figured, Kiran: being a mother and being a designer is at the heart of all your expression. Be it then the Riverside School, much acclaimed and spoken of, how they nourish children over there and do not hinder their imagination and empower their thoughts. Two, having an initiative called Approach, where it is children who use the power of design thinking to make much better cities that are children friendly. And I was just delighted to know, Kiran, about this wonderful initiative called Design for Change, which is led by children and it's present in 60 countries and beyond. Wow, how amazing. Thank you so much for joining us in this panel. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot of Kiran coming our way.
Thank you, Preeti. Excited to be part of this. Yes. So let's bring it on.
Yes. So with that, moving from Ahmedabad, I'm going on to Pune to invite Yajoti Singh. Now, Yajoti is going to bring to us a very important dimension to this topic, that of mental health. So Yajoti is a development psychologist, a family therapist, a special educator, as in she works with children with special needs, and has over 30 years of experience in the area of mental health. And she spends her time between counseling, lecturing, mentoring, supervising, and holding workshops and training in the area of mental health with a lot of schools, social sector organizations, even dealing with very sensitive topics like child sexual abuse. So thank you so much, Yajoti, for being on this panel with us.
My pleasure and honor. Looking forward to it.
And moving on from Yajoti, may I welcome our very own Abhilasha. So, Abhilasha, welcome. Abhilasha is joining us out of the multiple hats that she wears. Right now, she's joining us as a young mother to her 8-year-old daughter. In addition to this, she, of course, is a seasoned HR professional and has donned different hats in the industry, been with the technology sector, with healthcare. And she loves to travel herself. And in her words, is a student of life. Welcome, Abhilasha.
Thank you, Preeti, for such a sweet introduction and really looking forward to the conversation here.
And dear friends, holding all of this together is none other than Anuradha Sant. Anuradha, could you just say a hello so that we know we can hear you, you can hear us?
Yes. Hi everyone.
Okay, so
we did have jitters by not me able to hear or speak anything, so it's finally okay.
Yeah. Well, you were giving us the true flavor of parenting, where something has to happen in the last minute.
Absolutely.
And then we have to figure out what is it that we can do.
Absolutely.
So Anuradha is, of course, a very seasoned HR professional herself. She has worked with many multinational organizations in the role of organization development and change. She has been an internal coach in some of her roles, and now she works as an independent coach herself. She is an MCC. For those of you not from the coaching world, that is a very big deal because she is a master coach and has more than 4,500 hours of coaching to her credit. So that's really amazing, and couldn't have had anyone better to hold this together. And of course, something that I think binds all of us here, together is that we're all parents. So that, of course, is the is the thread that's going to start slowly unraveling as we go on. So over to all of you for a lovely discussion. I'm right here backstage monitoring the Q&A and stuff, and I will take the liberty to jump in should I watch something that needs your attention. But otherwise, looking forward to this. Have a great one.
Thank you.
Thank you. So yes, I think good morning, good evening, wherever you are calling in from, and I am so excited and super honored to be the moderator for this panel of such awesome women that we have here. So let me begin by actually expanding the understanding of being a parent. Let's not restrict ourselves to just being called a parent of another human being. Let's expand that definition to being maybe a pet parent, maybe a plant parent, maybe a book parent, or author of, or creator of some art. So anything that we could nurture and look after is, I think, the definition of being a parent. So I'm trying to expand this here so that in the essence of being inclusive to all audience, we could then, start this discussion, and we will try and follow it up with a Q&A. And we would really want you to, as Preeti has already mentioned, to kind of get rid of all possible distractions, because we do have a powerhouse panel here, and we would want you to engage with us in the chat box with your comments and the Q&A, which we would then address to the panel, and we will get this exciting conversation going. As I was reflecting upon this topic, and it was a topic about parenting and the ever-evolving parenting, what came to me was that life really affords us no greater responsibility and no greater privilege than actually to be raising the next generation. So that's a huge honor and a privilege to be a parent and to be in this panel to discuss things forward. So without much ado, I would really like to invite each one of you one by one. Maybe we can start with Kiran, as she is on my extreme right, and really kind of asking you in terms of a little more about yourself, and how many children do you have, what age groups do they come in from, and what has been your experience so far as a parent. I know it could go into, a lot of minutes to kind of describing this, but I will kind of urge you to make it succinct so that we can move on to the next part of our conversation. So over to you, Kiran, and tell us. Yeah.
Yeah, well, just a little bit. I think Preeti already shared that I am first a mother, then a designer, and then I happened to get into education just out of chance and not out of great design. So I think when I kind of describe, especially for a parenting sort of panel, I would say I was super lucky to have role models as excellent parents. So I think the first introduction to what it means to be parented happened with my own childhood. So I give enormous credit to the way I was brought up, with so much joy and laughter. My parents were shameless about hugging us and telling us that they loved us. So I think for me, the first kind of seeds were planted about what it felt to be loved, to be safe, to be listened to. So maybe unbeknownst to me, they became the roadmap of how maybe I would parent when I became a parent. So I think the ingredients of just love and laughter in life were so inherent in my own upbringing that I see that when I finally became a mother many, many years ago. So to answer your question, I'm a mother of two amazing children, and also, like you said, expand the notion of parenting. I happen to also parent 440 children at school, right? So I always look at my role first as a parent. So my children, of course, are now no longer children. My son is 31 years old. My daughter is 27. So I've had a lovely experience and a sort of journey of parenting intimately, my own, and then parenting immersively with my 440. So I think it's been fabulous. I keep saying parenting is about being flawed and fabulous. I think if you own it and you never constantly put the pressure of having to parent a certain way, you will just have the best time in this journey. So that's really succinctly my contribution to this.
Beautiful. I love it. I love it, Kiran. And let me then take this conversation to Yajoti. Tell us more about yourself and your journey.
Thank you so much. I think I'd like to begin with the fact that being a developmental psychologist, I thought I was so equipped when I had my own children, age 35 and 27 now. And I thought like I knew it all the philosophies I've learned and I've interned and I've like kind of done it all. And they broke all myths. And it was like completely different when it came to being a parent to your own child. And this whole concept of unconditionality, the whole concept of not following rigid norms and principles and things like that was completely thrown out of the window. And every time I expected something and I was like hair tearing, pulling experiences that happened, I grew a little more. And I think through this entire journey, I feel I could summarize it as a soulfully developmental kind of a journey where at the end of it, this whole gamut of emotions that I've been through as a parent is something I never thought I was ever capable of being through. I think right from the euphoria of their birth to the despair, the frustration, the love, the anger, it's like, so it's been really, really fulfilling. I think there were times when it was the highest points and the lowest points I think I've experienced as a parent. The fright, it's like one of my favorite authors, Elizabeth Sloat, says that it's like allowing your heart to walk out of your body. And literally, and then of course, the final allowing them the redundancy, allowing them to move away, be independent, and that had its own thing. So I think this complete journey of fostering, loving, mentoring, trying to own, and then letting go of your two most precious human beings on this earth. Of course, I have gained in the bargain my two most beautiful, unconditional go-to friends and my critics and my technical experts on so many things. And I have to just call up and say, what do I do? What do I wear? What do I, so little things where I know completely unbiased judgments are there. So it has definitely been my most beautiful, both these journeys till now. And going on, of course, and will always go on till I'm there. Yeah.
Lovely. Beautiful. Beautiful share, Yajoti. Over to you, Abhilasha.
So if I compare myself with the rest of the panel, I'm a newbie on the block. Right? So my child is just 7 years old. So I'm still in that stage where cuddles and, little hands come and hold your hand and all those sweet things happen. Right? But like you guys were sharing, nothing in the world actually prepares you for parenting. That's been my experience. So you may read books, you may have been parented, you see other friends and colleagues go through that same journey, but nothing prepares you for it. When you have your child, everything is a new thing. Every day is a new experience, right? And like you were saying, Yajoti, that you feel that you have got everything nailed down, but this comes your way and you realize that there is absolutely nothing in your control. And therefore, what happens is that you have to go with the flow. And simplicity, what I've realized is simplicity helps. What you look at is if you come from a place of love, things become easier. Even the days which are not so amazing and are frustrating, they become easier to handle if you come from the place of love. So in the last 7 years, I have grown leaps and bounds as a person. It helps me just get in touch with who I am as a true self, because there's a little mini me right in front of me showing me that mirror, okay, which nobody else in the world has done to me, right? In my corporate career, dealing with very senior leaders and all of that, but this little one just shows me the mirror so beautifully. And it makes me realize that, I want to be a better person. So for me, I'm a work in progress, and the evolution is going on, and it's going to happen for many years to come because, like I said, I'm a young mother.
Lovely. Thanks. And little bit I could add about myself as well. So I really I listened to the session which happened yesterday about parenting, and they talked about listening with empathy and compassion. And there was one particular statement which one of the panelists made, was that parenting actually starts from conception. And so that really stuck with me, that there is this inherent need to be seen, to be felt, to be heard, and in a nurturing and in a loving and a kind environment. And so I have gone through, right? So my daughter's now 31; she just turned that in August, and so it's been a journey, really, ups and downs and all of that. And I completely agree with all of you when you say that nothing prepares you for this. I very diligently read books on parenting, and I used to have this Bible, beside me, which was a Dr. Spock at that point of time. I don't know if you were right. So maybe the earlier mothers would know, yeah. So there was this Dr. Spock who could tell you anything and everything that you could do with your child. And for me, there was this one sentence that I read there, which said that every child is different and every parent is different. And at the end of it, do what you think is right. And I heaved a big sigh of relief, and I said, oh my God, I don't have to refer to his encyclopedia every time I am, looking for an answer. I just want to look for that answer internally and intuitively. And that's the day when I kept the book aside and I said, I don't want to refer to this anymore. I will really refer to what my inner instinct as a mother is telling me, and I will kind of really take it from there. So completely agree. I think if the intent is right, I think the actions automatically flow. And that's the one thing that I really took from that. And that's how I've kind of led my life through. So yeah, so it's been beautiful so far. And I hope it remains that way. So let's really think about the topic itself. We're talking about ever evolving parenting. So I really want to kind of hear from you as to what resonates with you all in that. What's this evolution that we are talking about? What's the need? And who does it serve? So anyone, I think let's make it free flowing, or whoever wants to chime in. Or we may want to take turns. So maybe Kiran first, Yajoti, and then Abhilasha.
I mean, I don't think it's just with parenting, right? Ever evolving is a law of life. I mean, it's you can't stay still. That's the whole thing. Growth only happens with movement and with growth, right? So just like in every other field, I think for me, parenting, a couple of lessons I have learned. I mean, if I were to say, and maybe in some ways they have served me well, in, like your Jyoti says, all the ups and downs that you will face, or as Abhilasha says, that it's this work in progress. I think for me, now in hindsight, I mean, a lot of your wisdom often comes only in hindsight, When you're in it, you think you're doing the best job, or you're this thing. Then in hindsight, you say, that was wisdom. So for me, in hindsight, if I'm looking at a couple of things, I keep thinking, that children possibly will never listen to you, but they will always mimic you. Right? That's one of the truisms I have seen, whether it is as a parent of my own too, or as a parent or teacher of the children who have been at school. So they might not listen to you. You've seen so many children who go back and mimic their teachers, or I've seen children who will mimic their parents. So I think one thing that I have learned out of great humility is that you have to be worthy of being mimicked. You have to live a life that is worthy of being mimicked, because finally you're planting these seeds by the way the children realize what is that worldview that you navigate? What is it about kindness or compassion? You can't teach it. You have to be it. And when you're being it, it's likely that your child will mimic that particular behavior or action. And therefore, if it's done enough times, it becomes habit. Habits are formed overnight, they are formed over time. And if you have the unique opportunity to have your children with you, maybe for 15, 20 years, and then of course they move on, the ability to be worthy of that, I think, is one lesson I learned as a parent. I think the second lesson I learned, and I often question this whole thing of mother tongue. We say, what's your mother tongue? We tell children, we must learn the mother tongue. And we think it's Punjabi or Hindi or English or Bengali, but it is the mother's tongue that matters. It is the words she uses. It is the way she talks about kindness and joy and friendship and love and justice and peace. That's the mother tongue we have so powerful with us. And we don't exercise that enough. We don't really make those words matter. And often we think, when we say something that is abrupt and that could be hurtful, we think, but I love you, so everything should be fine. No, I mean, it deserves and demands that we use our words also with the way our mother's tongue can actually sort of serve. And I think that the whole thing is the mother's touch. I find that the body has memory, and we are really a repository of stories. And every hurt, every scar, every hug tells a story. So I would say very often I feel that mothers, and mainly mothers, we have two faces. We have either the frown when we have our children walk into the home and we have a frown. We said, what's the homework? What you've not done, etc. We don't shift it to saying, I love you. I think you're wonderful. Did you make a friend today? Were you kind today? Who was kind? We don't use that well. And that frown face often becomes the first thing out of great love. So I think for me, learning the idea of the difference with the touch, the hug, the voice, the idea and the self. We are one of these. And if we can exercise those with intention and shamelessness, I love the word shameless. You're shameless. No conjuicy with love and hugging and smile. So, be a lot of that. I think that will serve you no matter what evolves. I mean, we are in an evolving, but for me, those have become universal sort of guiding principles in that. So I think that's really some lessons I have learned. And then when I've exercised that with truth, I find that it serves the moment well.
Lovely. Oh, and I think there's a mini story that I wanted to, when you talked about mother tongue. So my father used to always say, so we are Punjabis, but we never learned Punjabi because my mother could speak Punjabi. So she used to speak Hindi. And so my father used to always say, why do they say mother tongue? And why do they not say father tongue? Because the father never has an opportunity to speak.
To speak.
Yeah. So yeah, Jyoti.
So I think as far as this evolutionary aspect and the evolving parenthood is concerned, I think besides keeping in cognizance the fact that biogenetically, as well as socioculturally, as well as in terms of so many different domains which are there, there's been a transition. There's been an evolution as far as every individual is concerned. And I think one of the primary premises of parenting for me also has been changing the concept of parenthood traditionally, because probably what my grandparents did or my parents did, which was completely beautiful, but might not work. And as I'm saying already, might not even work for the next generation when in terms of there's so many different ideologies which are coming into now the children's mindsets. There's a broader vision. There's certain things where the children are so much smarter today. They are so well informed, and I think the parents are also very well informed. But the parents somewhere, I think this keeping up with the children's information is somewhere becoming a battle, and not being prepared enough. So I think this whole thing about evolving parenthood is actually, like Kiran said, listening, the kind of openness as to just be there unconditionally, go with the flow, like Abhilasha was saying, and just let it unfold this journey, because there are no traditional definitions of children. There are no traditional definition of parenthood. So this whole thing about evolving parenthood or evolving as a parent is constantly keeping abreast of your child. Your child might not even be what somebody else's child is. So, the whole thing is about just evolving with your child, with your own style of parenting, evolving as a human being, like Kiran said, being a good role model. So, having this whole thing of this whole aspect of evolutionary concepts or evolving parenthood is everyone in this relationship, everyone involved. So it's not just the child and the parent, but you as a parent, and the level of frustration or happiness that you carry, which you execute, or kind of pass on to somebody else because of the parenting, your child, because of your kind of parenting, whether it's demands or whether it's overindulgence or whether it's just not equipping the child, and then what the child contributes later on to the environment around. I think this whole aspect and this whole interplay of where you have been, where you're going to be tomorrow, the growth that is happening on a day-to-day basis, what finally comes out as a kind of result of parenting, which is a never-ending journey, is something that constantly needs to be reviewed on a daily basis. Your child might be in a good mood yesterday, but tomorrow there could be certain triggers which could be happening, and to evolve from what you did yesterday to what you're going to do today or tomorrow is so very important. So I think that's the most challenging part, as well as the completely fulfilling part, because you can't sit back complacently on what you did before, and you cannot allow that same philosophy to work with you in the next 10 years. And I think I have personally seen with my children, like both my children, they teach me so many things and say, no, mom, that's really not what it should be and how it should be. And there's so many different perspectives which are there. And I think this evolution of being open to having these kind of growth factors coming in from the children and from people around, I think is where evolutionary or evolving parenthood takes on this evolutionary aspect.
Beautifully said. Abhilasha, like to chime in?
Yes, absolutely. So I would like to look at evolution from a slightly different angle. So while all of the stuff Kiran and Yajyoti, you guys said, absolutely agree with that. In my experience of last 7 years, I'm seeing it as my own evolution. So as a parent, I am evolving every single day. How I am being with my child each day is not the same. But also at the same time, learning from each day as to how I could be. Right? While being, bringing in simplicity and not making it too complex to get lost in the process, but doing it simply. And when you look at a child that I have, which is that age, a lot of times what they need is just your time and attention and your presence. Exactly the way they are present for you. So when they come to you, they're not thinking about anything else. They are with you. And that's what they're looking for as well. So I have felt more grounded in the last 6-7 years, where, how to be present with her and keep aside my multiple distractions and just be with her. Right? And in that moment, am I always successful? Answer is no. But at least there is an endeavor to do that more and more. And that definitely makes a shift in how child responds to you and the relationship per se. In the olden days, one could think that for a child of that age, how do you define relationship? It's very critical, because they learn. Whatever they see, they imitate, they learn, and it stays with them for a long time. And therefore, it's almost like, even though age-wise she's 7, she's an equal partner in the household. There are, of course, some boundaries that we draw, but otherwise she's an equal partner. She's not, okay, you're a child and you can't say this or you can't do that and all of that. So that's the kind of involvement. But as I'm doing all of that, as a person, I'm the one who's evolving. Right? So as a parent, my husband and I, we are the people who are evolving, and we talk about this often, as to how we responded, what happened, and what is it doing to us as individuals as well. Yeah, I'll take a pause now. And
Yeah. No, I think so well said when you said that, the children need our presence more than our presence, right? So, yeah. Preeti? Yeah.
Anuradha, if I may just come in while I'm
Yes,
watching
please.
also the comments from our lovely audience.
Yes, lovely. Yeah.
Two things that I would like to bring forth. One is, of course, as is very evident, this is an all women panel. And so perhaps bringing in really two perspectives. One, what is the role of the father? I mean, we are right now talking about parent, but do we want to throw light on the mother's role and the father's role?
Yes.
And linked to that is another important question that comes up from Vinita. Can we address evolving as a single parent?
Yes.
When you have limited access to your child, and how can you coach yourself as a single parent? So that's something for you to take up.
Yes.
Thank you.
We have that. I have a whole layer of conversation points. And yes, thanks for bringing that to our attention. Yeah. So as we were talking about evolution, and I think I also really, picked up a lot of your points here in terms of saying that it is a ever evolving situation, right? What was yesterday is not going to be today, and tomorrow is going to be a little different as well, right? So, and who better to teach you this is your own child, right? So, we as parents, mothers and fathers, I think learn from their children. And I liked what Kiran said, that you have to be worthy to be mimicked, right? Because the important thing is here that the frustrations one may have as a parent, that many a times, and I can say this, that children don't listen, but they always watch you, right? So that's important, that how do you constantly be under the scanner and constantly be the person who really needs to live a life and lead by example, because that's really what parenting and the biggest challenge about parenting is about. So let's move to the other. So, or maybe let's take this topic, what Preeti mentioned, and let's let it kind of evolve as we go. What do you think is then the role of a father, and what happens if there is a situation where there is a single parent situation? So, what are your views on that aspect? And then maybe let's start from the reverse. Let's have Abhilasha go first.
so, in terms of the role of a father, and I can speak from my own experiences, that when you give birth to a child, it's the woman who does that, right? So it's the mother who does that, and therefore physiologically and naturally, some of the things directly goes to the mother. However, the father has over a period has to play an almost an equal role. While physiologically some things cannot be done by the father, but there's so many other things that person can chime in for. So it is like two people have decided to bring a child into this world, and two people sort of need to balance what they will do to support that life on this planet, right? There isn't again a defined role or a set of guidelines, but that's something that evolves between the two individuals, which is the parents, where there are two of them. They evolve those guidelines and see what works when and where for the two of them. And it's not one person driving the whole parenting agenda. It is a unit that supports. And there's a saying that it takes an entire village to bring up a child, and which is true. So it's not just the two parents, but all the others involved in the family as well. So I will extend it to the grandparents, to the uncles and the aunts, the chachus and the masis and everybody who come into the picture. because one person alone, it's very hard to do everything, and that's where the family sort of comes in. But the two people who have to play a much bigger part is the mother and the father. They are also in that sense responsible to make sure things are happening, right? Now coming to the second part of the question, Anu, where what if it's a single parent and you don't have access to the child all the time and the time is limited? I would say then that particular time that you have with the child needs to be most beautifully utilized. And it's almost like if you have a limited resource, how will you put that to best use?
Yeah.
And that's something you define for yourself, but not in isolation. Also see the other party, which is the child here. What would the child like to do in that time, and what will support the child? So that, again, the partnership between the two will need to come in, between the parent and the child. And it's not just the parent's perspective being put on the child that you need this, therefore I'm giving this to you. But what would the child need in that 2 hours or 2 days or 7 days in a year or whichever way it is, and make the most of that, because that is a constraint that you're operating with.
Sure. Yajoti, Kiran, you want to kind of add to this?
Yeah. So I think this whole thing of father versus mother in parenting is not related to the child at all. So to the child, the attachment. So besides the physiological aspects of the pregnancy and breastfeeding, the father can do everything. So for the parent, or for the how they execute these roles is very important. So if there is a single parent, the whole thing is based on the theory of attachment, where the child gets attached, and that gives this whole sense of security and love. And the more secure a child is, the more the child kind of feels confident. And also, the security comes from the bond that you have in terms of the attachment. How this attachment happens is the child, the amount of time spent, the significant tasks which are there for the child, which are done, where the person is available. So here it might not even be either of the parent there. It's the person who takes over the role of a parent. So this whole concept of father and mother, I think, is only related to the context because this is the way it is. But traditionally, to the child who comes with completely no biased notions of I'm going to be more attached to the mother, it happens. Why? Because of the kind of time that gets spent, or the kind of hugs, or the attachments, or the roles which is executed. And here, if the father is going to be as involved, especially in the crucial developmental tasks of the child, keeping in mind that availability of time might not be possible due to other logistics. Here, then, outsourcing it to family members, like Abhilasha said, it's not a single person process. So it is the shared kind of timing, which could be done with a significant family, trusted member, very, very important, trusted family member, and how much that is going to be. So obviously, the fact that there's single parenting means the quantity of time might be a restriction. But the quality of time here doesn't mean overindulgence, but a very matter of fact parenting where the child gets used to this kind of parenting. And the attachment automatically happens then with this significant person which is there. In fact, even in schools and in hospitals and a whole lot of things, they never say we want to meet the mother. It's like we want to meet both the parents, or we want to meet the person who is responsible or who's the caretaker of the child. So in terms of caretaking, it doesn't have to be a mother only, because there could be times where there's a demise, there's a divorce, custody issues which have happened. Now, if the single parenting is happening now, after a certain years of developmental growth has happened, and now the child is kind of with, dominantly with one parent, then the child needs to be finger held through this process at a very psychological, socio-emotional level, considering who the child has gotten attached to till now. and then to take over due to whatever reasons, that is where is going to need probably more help, could be professional help. So here being absolutely aware of where the child is with this journey. Is the child already attached to a one person and now becoming completely dependent, or kind of living with the other parent? It's a different thing. But if the parent is single, this whole thing myth about fathers not being equally important as compared to a mother, I reiterate, is a myth. Because there are so many children, I have so many clients who come and say, I love my father the most, or they've said daddy the first thing, or the involvement right from the delivery room, the father is there. Probably the father gets to hold the baby first. So, so there's so many things where the involvement is not about the gender at all. So these days there are, gender identities, and there are parents who could be both of one sex. So all that really doesn't have to be adopted children who are there are equally attached, depending on how this whole attachment process has happened. And
Yeah,
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 that's my
yeah, very relevant. Yes. So Kiran, as you hear this, what do you think are the patterns or the trends that you're observing in this space? What is the evolution, the changes that you're seeing in this entire fabric of parenting?
Yeah, I think the biggest shift, at least I've seen. Now I'm talking as somebody who's seen so many parents, and with the children that I have. There are no rules. There is no one size fits all. There is no formula for success. You could have two parents, and yet the child feels neglected. You could have a single parent and the child feels super loved. You could have parents of the same sex giving the best. And so I think all of those have been kind of challenged in terms of what we feel parenting should be with the father mother role. So I think both Abhilasha and Yajyoti have said very clearly, it's the quality of care. It could come from whoever it is. I think the quality of care, if one can just focus on that. I keep thinking longevity doesn't make relationships happen. Not even proximity. It's the quality. Right? I might be with you for life and I will not have a relationship with my father. I might meet you, like my father used to travel a lot, but I can't remember the times he traveled. I have just the memory of his laughter and his time. And then much later, my sister told me, do you know Papa used to travel 20 days in the month? And I'm saying, what? I can't remember that. I can't remember the times he was not there, because I think the times he was there, as your Jyoti says, the quality of that was so powerful that it lasted me maybe for all of those memories. So I think that's what we have to focus on. It isn't the gender, it isn't which role you take, it is the quality. It's the quality of the care that the child experiences. It could be from anybody around. But all our children are deserving of that quality of care, right? And I think if we can just put that as the reason for being, again, worthy of being around children, everything else gets taken care of.
Yeah. So well said. You said that you need to be present in there today for them to carry memories of you tomorrow. Right? So
exactly.
Yeah. So really, you need to be there for them to kind of really remember you for all the good things. And I think this evolution and these changing patterns and this evolving times and all of that. And I think what has really stuck with me, and I think maybe coaching here has kind of helped me, is to really meet the child where they are, right? So it really comes from what the need is, what the desire is, and what the current situation is demanding. And I think that intuitively parents, whether we are a single parent or father and mother both, I particularly, in my experience, I lost my husband quite a few years back, and we were, as a team, we would play this good cop bad cop routine, and always I was the bad cop, because he would say that I just can't be, strict and, very stoic in front of my daughter, because he says I kind of give in very easily. So I would always then end up playing the bad cop routine. And post his demise, I think it was just the um, presence that he had and the quality of the presence that really has curated such beautiful memories for us to kind of take forward. And I then just step into the role and saying, okay, what would he have said? What would he have done? And, continue that way. So, yeah, I think it's just, for me, it's really being in the moment and really listening into what your child needs. And now she's a young adult, and still evolving. So yeah, it's a journey, as we all have mentioned, right? So as we are growing in this conversation as well as evolving, what do you think are the real wins and challenges in this process? And let me go to you, Kiran, again, and then we'll take it from there. So,
I just want to make a case because I've had the huge opportunity to have met children across the spectrum because of approach, because of design for change, across the world as well, going to Peru and Bhutan and Japan. And there's one thing that I want to keep focusing on and just ask us to question that very premise. I think we have often mistaken and confused obedience for respect. Therein we have lost the game, right? And so much of parenting, schooling, hierarchy of relationships is done out of obedience. And very often we align it to our culture. Indian culture, we must be obedient, and, that's respectful. We must not talk back to our elders. It is not respectful. And I think we've forgotten that obedience is really an act of power. Okay, it's an act of hierarchy. It's a play of power to say, you will be quiet and I will tell you what needs to be done. So it's a very passive receiving. And in fact, I've seen a lot of parents who've now become parents themselves, and they'll say, what did you ever want to be? And they will say, I wanted to do this. And they're doing completely the opposite. I said, what happened? I was not allowed. And I see that rejection. And then if I have a parent who's feeling a sense of deep loss, personal passion, identity loss, it's less likely that I'm going to, understand what my child might feel. So I think if we can understand that respect is a very active verb. It asks of you to lean in. It asks of you to listen. It asks of you to get your mind shifted by virtue of that conversation. And in design thinking, we talk a lot about co-creation. The idea is you never solve for somebody, you always solve with somebody. That word with is crucial to parenting, to schooling, to everything that I've seen. And I'd like for us to question that wherever we feel that, that, because very often parenting could be in a joint family, or it could be in this thing, right? So the idea of obedience and respect are so very different. And if we can just understand and shift a little bit of how we understand what respect is, because respect is such a powerful way to engage with one another. And obedience is all about compliance and power. So I think somewhere, a lot of Indian parenting, a lot of Southeast Asian parenting, a lot has been around obedience, you obey. So I would just say that if we can, and this, by the way, I've learned out of sheer experience, and deep humility. So I want to share it just by virtue of not any gyan, but of my own understanding. And hopefully that will help us understand what that means.
Yeah. Jyoti, you want to kind of add to that? Wins and challenges,
So I think this is probably the crux of any parenting, the challenges and wins. And especially from the evolving parenthood kind of a perspective, even more. So talking of basically the challenges, it's I think the biggest challenge is already having preconceived, conditioned notions of not only parenting, but also the kind of child that you want, or what an ideal child might be, or what you feel, you'd like to kind of probably have at the end of the journey. And this is where a lot of my child clientele come with a lot of anxiety, lot of like serious anxiety related issues, right from OCD to hair pulling, and only because of a lot of challenges that they face, like Kiran said, trying to live up to something they might not be capable of. So I think this whole condition thing of children need to be like this needs to be done away with. That's the biggest challenge for the child and for the parent, because in the process of parenting, then instead of the joy, you're constantly anxious. Oh, they're not getting good marks, they're not completing this, they haven't done this, they haven't got certificates, they haven't got medals. And this whole joy of just seeing that child be who he is completely robbed away with this primary factor, which is really one of the hugest challenges that I see across in parents, been part of it also. So I think the challenge also comes to accepting the child for who he or she is. So accepting red flags, identifying red flags, intervening where those red flags are concerned, whether they are neurological problems, whether they are emotional problems, whether the child needs counseling, or whether the child is going through a bad patch, is another challenge where a lot of parents push a lot of things under the carpet saying, my child can't go be, this is not possible. That's another huge challenge with parenting that is constantly coming across. And of course, this challenge of talking about your child to somebody else, or like, keeping up with the Jones. There are these WhatsApp groups which have unfortunately come up of parents and, school related groups. And it's like, my child got this medal, and oh, my child did this. And it's like, one of the biggest challenges, if possible, is to get out of this rat race, because your parenting, your child is not part of any race. And I think for you to stop being accountable to anybody for what your child is doing is something that will give a lot of sense of peace to you and actually help enjoy the journey. And I think finally, the biggest win then will be just to see who your child has turned out to be, where the child has come in his own journey, because the children have come with their own blueprint in life. They are going to unfold just as they are meant to be. Finally, parenting is just about mentoring, providing, facilitating, and backing off, because we don't own them in any way. They've come here to learn their own experiences, and we are one of the most important aspects in their life for sure. But we're not the only contributors in their life. So I think at this stage, the biggest win is actually unconditionally accepting your child for who that child is right from birth. I mean, there are times when if a diagnosis has to be given for an ADHD or for autism or depression, there's a lot of resistance. Or there's always this whole thing, I hope my child is not going through this. Or this whole thing about the child overcoming something which could be a problem. So it's like just letting the child be. And that could be a challenge, especially when your child is at the worst phase of teenage and doing things which it's like allow the journey. And then finally, the win is accepting unconditionally what they have turned out to be.
Very, very, very well said, Jyoti. I think they're such experienced, things that you've mentioned. Yeah, and it's end of day, it's not about what you do for your children. It's really what you have taught them or what you've made them experience for them to do things for themselves and be successful, right? That's really where the entire journey needs to culminate, is that how do you teach your kids to count? That's good, but how do you teach them what really counts, right? So those are things which are so important. Abhilasha, would you like to kind of add to this piece with regards to the wins and challenges?
I'll share a personal example here.
Yeah.
So very often I tell my daughter that thank you for choosing us as your parents. Thank you for being in our life. And she looks at me like whenever we say that to her, She looks at us, and then there's a huge smile. And the reason I'm sharing this is going back to your point, Jyoti, that they have come here with their own blueprint, their own destiny, right? And they have chosen us as parents. That's something I truly believe in, because the child happened at a time, and that particular child has come into your life, and you're the parent of that child and no other child, right?
Yeah.
So it is their choice that they have decided to come to us as parents. I may be going a little bit philosophical, but let me come to the points. And therefore, you as a parent, you're holding the space for the child for the amount of time that the child will be with you. And then, of course, will fly away after some time on their own journey, like all of us have from our parents, right? We're all on our own journey. So till that time, when you're holding the space for your child, you treat the child as another human being, another person, a full person, right? Who may not sometimes be physically capable of doing everything. So when they're born, they can't walk, they can't feed themselves, and so on. Slowly, they learn to do that. And as they grow, now a 7-year-old can speak so fluently, gets her points across, does everything, has an opinion about stuff, wants to be her own person, assert herself. And I need to, accordingly, as a parent, see how she's evolving and allow her the space with certain guardrails and boundaries, so that, she doesn't end up hurting herself or going onto tracks which may not be desirable overall, but an open space and a lot of it for her to bloom and come up as her own person. And one of you referred to preconceived notions. All of us have been brought up in different ways as compared to how we're trying to bring up our own children. And those things sometimes come into play. And those are the moments when you have to become aware of what's happening to you and where is that coming from, whether it is about obedience, whether it is about behaving in a certain way. And you need to check yourself. So which is why I go back to the point that it is actually my evolution much more than hers. Because she's here with her own, blueprint, and she's going to go on with that. But how do I be there for her is an important factor.
Yeah. And I think as we were talking, I think I looked at my watch and I said 1 hour has already gone. And I know that the chat box, and I'm glancing at it, the chat box is on fire, and so are the questions. And I think we have loads of questions, and I do see Preeti come in here as well. So over to you, Preeti. You want to kind of shoot a few questions, or is there anything else that you have in mind?
No, absolutely. Just weaving in a question here at this point, Anuradha.
Yes.
And this is a question which has been upvoted, as in it's being asked by Divya, but I think voted by a few others. How can we balance our different philosophies as parents? Both of us have different styles of parenting, and how can we not confuse them, the children, with our different styles? Is an honest question there for the panel.
I think I'll just add one bit of myself, my point of view, and then so it's a partnership, right? For parents, I think it needs to be a partnership. And as I mentioned, we used to do this agreement of who's going to be the good cop, bad cop, but that was pre-decided, right? One would kind of decide who's playing what role, and not really have that confused sense in front of the child, because and we had an unsaid rule that if I am being the disciplinarian, then you are not going to step in and pacify or diffuse the moment, because that's not your role at that point of time. So my experience has been that it's a partnership, and we may have different styles, we may have different approaches, and we may have different experiences. We may have grown up in maybe one a very strict, disciplined house, and one it could be, right? So we do exactly what we have experienced. A small little thing here that I'd like to add: my mother used to always say this, And I would get angry at her when she said this, that when you become a mother or when you become a parent, then you'll see, right? And I used to keep telling her, no, don't have to say. And it's so funny, and at times I kind of get tickled by it, but it's saying I exactly say the same to my daughter, and it's right, uh, and many times I also maybe repeat things which my mother used to say to me, right? So but I think I'll just stop here by saying that I think it's a partnership. I don't think one needs to confuse the child with your different ideologies. I think you need to really meet the child where they are.
Can I add a point here?
Yes, please. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, like you've absolutely, kind of hit the nail on the head, and it's a partnership, and especially if there are differing philosophies as far as parenting is concerned, then there should be delegation, so that there are certain aspects which get taken over completely by one of the parent, and the other parent then should make it a point not to interfere where that domain is concerned, because any kind of inconsistency in parenting makes children manipulative. It could get them not only confused, but they will know exactly how to kind of get their way. The entire objective of parenting, where core kind of boundaries are being set or certain sense of securities are being given, itself will be washed away. So if this core fabric of parenting needs to be kept, to mature adults who have brought in a human being into the world need to then first, kind of understand that there are different philosophies, differing ideologies as far as parenting is concerned. Great. But what you bring to the table in front of the child and how much you interfere with an area which is of pertinence is something where you need to also learn, kind of back off. It's not an ego battle. Sometimes some parents, kind of have this thing that, but, they just don't allow this, or this parent doesn't allow this. Sometimes you say, why not? Why should the parent? So, have you kind of really thought it over, or are you going by certain very rigid patterns yourself? Because parenting is about being flexible. What are certain things that you can allow a little folds, and when do you allow them? Which parent is allowed certain things, I think, is what is important as far as differing philosophies is concerned. But it's very, very important to actually get this consistent, especially in front of the child. A lot of the times children kind of hear parents arguing in front of them. So I had this case of a 7-year-old who came and said that, no, ma'am, it's okay. You don't tell my mother, please, about this. So I said, okay, but why? Like, she was referred for being extremely, there were a whole lot of issues which had come up. So I said, okay, but, maybe we could work this out. No, they argue a lot because of me, and I feel so bad because of me. My parents have a lot of fights. And that whole thing about my parents having a lot of fights because of me was only because of differing disciplinarian techniques. If the parent says, why are you not allowing her to do this? Why are you allowing her to watch so much of media? Or why did you give her a phone at this point? Why did you buy this at that point? And the parent says, okay, fine. But then say, why are you scolding her so much? Why does she have to sit and work at this point? It's okay. Give her a break now. And you defy rules and you take the child away. These can be very, very detrimental. So I think without even clashing in front of the child, and having consistency, delegation is very important. And this extends to the extended family also, because parents might be on one page, grandparents might be on another page, and that could be as detrimental.
Yeah. And I think what's coming to my mind is this other point about expectations and boundaries. And I think given the current scenario where our children are exposed to so much of information, be it media, be it the environment, the internet, what do you think is the role of us parents to then really work on or setting expectations and boundaries? Or should there be any expectations and boundaries? Maybe we can even discuss or debate that. Abhilasha, do you want to go here first? I don't know how much your child is exposed to the outside environment. But yes, let's hear you.
I also see Preeti come in. Preeti, did you
Yeah,
have something?
it's quite uncanny how Anuradha you've picked this up just when this question has come in. So I just want to also add this in because
Okay,
you're talking
okay.
about this, right? And the question comes from Avinash. Teenagers' exposure today is tremendous. My current concern is the language that they use to express their curiosity and view on sexual adventures. Such expressions, due to social media, stay as evidence forever. Girls and boys getting shamed, maybe girls more. How to deal with this in the context of children? So, just adding that into the discussion.
So who wants to take that on?
Can I take it?
Jyoti?
Yes,
Please.
absolutely.
Kiran, you want to do it? I think Kiran also raised hand.
I'm happy to add to whatever you're saying.
Yeah,
Okay.
Please.
you can go first, Jyoti, and then Kiran can definitely add on to it.
Okay, thank you. So, yes, it's exaggerated now even more because of lockdown and the complete dependence that they got because of online education, and they had to use, and people, parents who didn't even give them a phone or things like that. Now all children are exposed to the phone. Keeping in mind the curiosity that they have, be prepared for it, because this is the stage where there is going to be a lot of curiosity. Mentally be prepared for, okay, this is where my child can go. But this is also the time where you need to be invisible watchmen in their life. So you just need to know what is happening in their life. Certain things we need to understand they are going to have. So they are going to go through curiosity. They are, this is the stage where they begin with the first introduction to sexual concepts, their crushes, a lot of cyberbullying and things like that could happen. There's, in fact, because of media, there are a lot of students who are going through a lot of sexual identities already and confusions over that. So there are children who come in, like, just reveal in a session saying, I think I'm this. And there's so many terms that they have. Like a lot of them, you have to go and actually research and say, okay, what is it? And I think allow them this process, allow them this journey, because the more they're going to be curbed for this. Only thing is, you need to be approachable. So you are the person they're coming to talk to about this. Because very often what happens is shock value or judgmental advices, or just kind of, putting down or over restricting at this point could become a problem. Now there have to be rigid do's and don'ts in your house. There has to be a structure of rules which have to be, kind of kept up to, with both the parents being consistent here. What if the child breaks a rule? Very often they say, okay, I'm leaving the home, or they'll throw the phone is taken away from them. They actually go ballistic and a whole lot of things. So then what do you do at this point? This is where you draw boundaries. And this is where the boundaries have to be consistent then. Do not give a phone if it has been broken. See to it that both the parents maintain that you will not be, this is the consequence of what you've done. See to it that the consequence is not extreme. It is keeping in mind what has happened as far as that is concerned. See to it that it does not withdraw on food or withdraw on physical activities, etc. This whole thing, if they are, for example, they have a crush and you say that just so that they don't get in touch with anyone, everything is cut away. That is going to add the problem to a certain extent. So here you have to be extremely reasonable, understand the entire situation, the consequences of what could happen and what you need to do immediately. There are times where you might need to even introduce them to the POCSO law, which is about below 18 years. And there are agencies who do that. The school could do it, in fact. And education on the POCSO law itself to the child is an eye-opener, because very often when we're doing it, a lot of children say, we are not aware of this. Like below 18, no sex in our country is allowed, period. If they know it's a legality, if you could share it with them, also explain what it is. So very often children at this stage are getting more and more free when it comes to physicality, when it comes to experimentation with weed, smoking, and a whole lot of things. Always tell them what the consequences are for this whole thing in a very, very practical manner. And if it's not something which is illegal and it's related only to your disciplining at home, see to it that you all have actually played out the consequence that you all have said which should be reasonable. There should be no empty threats, because then the child, we've heard children say, "Arey, my father will get angry for 2 days. He'll be fine. He's giving me permission." So where these things are concerned, here the boundaries need to be absolutely clear. How rigid, how flexible, no sleepovers, but completely you're restricting the child on a lot of things. Where can you pipe in? Where could you give a leverage here is concerned. So are you also keeping with what the other peers are doing? Or is your child on a completely different rigid lifestyle? Because this is evolving. The children are evolving, even sexually. The children are evolving as far as their knowledge is concerned. So yes, abusive language, these days the 4-letter words and a whole lot of other words that kind of become absolutely common. How much shock value do you show with it? Because then you're reinforcing it, you're making them remember it even more. Sometimes it could just be kind of to test you. So here, how do you kind of psycho-educate them out of this whole thing? Being, of course, good role models, giving them the right opportunities. You could outsource agencies where these things are actually taught to them through schools or through various other ways which are there, and actually giving them live examples, being in touch with their group of friends, seeing to it that you are friendly with their group of friends. So it's a very free flow of friends coming into your home, they are going to somebody else's home, keeping on the same page with what is actually happening in your child's life, and not being at completely different tangent things. If they say that they have chosen a sexual identity already, it's okay. Say, okay, fine. And then again, remind them that till 18, they can't have sex. So to actually, be ascertained about their sexual identity might take a little longer. But yes, okay, fine. It's okay. I'm okay with whatever it is. I'm just here with you. If that message also could be given, this breaking of rules, how much do you encourage that? Children are not allowed bikes till a certain age, till they get a learner's license. We have children who come to junior college and 9th and 10th on the bikes. Who's given the bike? The parent has given the bike. So then how much have you allowed, and then you're now kind of holding back because they have misused it? So here again, they have the latest mobile phones. Do they really need that? How many hours do they need at this point? In fact, there are cases where we've actually had to refer cases for de-addiction, media de-addiction, where it's a 6-week program where the child is actually sent, because they are actually, DSM-5 has put it into an addiction category now, the media addiction which has happened. It's extremely serious. And if it's coming to a point where your child is different from what the child has been till now, is completely short-tempered, loses, complete balance of themselves, then please seek professional help, because these things could get worse. And they are all on these groups where they educate themselves on suicide hotlines. There are a whole lot of things which are there. They're learning so much from these medias that for you to be invisible watchman is important. The minute they know you're on their task, they will go locking up everything. Anyway, it's locked. If you find that your child is being sexually bullied, cyberbullying, etc., the child has spoken about it, or you've overheard them talk to a friend, you could use an agency for cyberbullying, or you could even have ways of mapping their phone just to find out, through computer, just to find out what's happening, because there have been times where the child has been ready to leave home and the parent got to know, luckily. So the bottom line is your relationship with your child has to be extremely communicative from early childhood, with you being absolutely practical about what you expect of your child and how much you allow your child to make mistakes, because this stage is about making mistakes, and how much you are there with your child through this mistake.
Yeah, beautiful. So I was reading in the chat, also said that you need to have boundaries with appropriate allowances, right? So I think, how do you balance the two? I think that's the $1 million question, right? Kiran, you wanted to add something to this.
No,
Sorry,
I think
Abhilasha.
Jyoti has just kind of given a fantastic overview of everything that can, should, and all be done. I am just so glad I grew up without the social media sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I see what it does to our children, and I see what it does to parents. And sometimes I keep thinking, while we say all of this, no, we like to parent out of convenience. Yeah, keep them occupied, keep them out of my head, give them a device. And So that contradiction has to be mitigated. That contradiction
Yeah.
has to be as less as possible, because that contradiction comes in the way of parenting, right? You can't say one thing and then keep them occupied and say, stay out of my hair. So whilst all the logic, because we're working, there are young parents now all traveling, doing their work. So how do I keep my child occupied? There's such a big need, and the device. I mean, I just keep thinking to myself, we will never give the keys of the car to a child at 2, and yet we hand over the biggest device that is the most addictive at the age of 2. So I think that, and then I've heard so many parents saying, like, they don't listen to me. Are yeah, who's the parent?
Exactly.
I've heard that often. I said, adult kaun hai? No, they won't listen to me. They will cry. And so I will give the thing. So I just think we all are muddling in this together, but that contradiction has to be as less as possible. And as Jyoti said, finally, it's what the child, I mean, I've said this to not only my 2, but all the 400 here in my school. I said, boss, you get into jail, no, you call me first. I'll jap you later, but you make sure you call me. But I keep telling children, I said, your parent should be the first one you should call. That's the relationship you should have. And I keep telling parents, I said, once the child leaves, the first holiday, they should come back to you. I'm not seeing that as much. Children are leaving and finally saying, oh, I'm going. So can you create a space at home where you're the safety net? While they might do these trapeze acts like these circus performers, and they should do that and expand the way they are as human beings, but can you be the safety net? If you can be that, and they should know it 100%, I think you're never going to have the answer, but hopefully you'll be one of the reasons that they would want to take what is right over what is easy. So, but I am so glad.
Imagine what I will have to experience, right? And my daughter becomes a teenager.
And yours is still just 7 years old, right? So
yeah.
Sometimes I'm so glad I'm out of the routine of getting up in the morning and the lunchbox and the school bus. And But all the best to you, Abhilasha, for that.
Thank you. I will need all of that.
Yeah, you were saying something as well.
No, I was just a very common scene that we see these days. We go to a restaurant, right? At the tables, you will see kids, parents talking and eating, and kids will be on some screen. And they're eating something which they don't even realize what they're eating. Versus, so at our house, like, we have certain boundaries on how much screen time my daughter can have. So she can watch a little bit of, let's say, Peppa Pig once a week, 2 episodes, which is 10 minutes or 15 minutes max. And that we've contracted with her. So it's almost like a process. So first, my husband and I agree, and then we contract that with her, saying this is what we're going to be doing, and we will all watch it together. But if I don't walk the talk there, she's not going to follow that. So then I do not watch TV at home. My husband doesn't watch TV at home. So we don't look at our screens. So when she's at our aunt's place, that's when we maybe catch up on a movie or some series or whatever, but very limited. So she needs to see that screen time is not something that you go after. Then the other point we spoke about is that how do we keep the kids busy? As parents, we almost take this responsibility that we have to entertain our children. But what we need to do is to give space to them, and they will entertain themselves. So right now, if you go into my other room, my daughter has tied different pieces of cloth around the house, and we're not allowed to clean that up. It's been there for the last 3 days. Nobody can touch it. It needs to be like that because she's building a tent, a big tent. Right? But she keeps busy. So she comes back from school and she keeps busy for hours together doing that, and everybody around the house has to be a helper. Yeah? So they need to get space to bring out their stuff. They'll make a mess, right? If you are an OCD of cleanliness, then you're going to feel like really bad about what's happening around you. But at the same time, you have to provide the space to them to do what they have to do. And screen is not the answer, essentially. Jyoti referred to the point that they become angry, they become agitated, and they get very aggressive. And I've seen that there are occasions when my daughter is visiting, let's say, another relative, and the screen happening there is a shift in behavior, and it's very, very prominent. And when you see that over a period, you need to then step in and see what's going on. Then you need to educate the other parts of your family as well. But whatever said and done, she's growing up in an ecosystem where that's what's happening all the time. And therefore, how do you bring back some sort of a sense of boundary to say that this is how we are going to do it at our place? All right?
Yeah.
And this is what we'll do with our time, and this is what we could do together. So that makes a big difference. But there is, again, no right answer. But all the points, Jyoti, you mentioned are so relevant. Because I have seen my teenage nephews and nieces. They're going through all of these. The good thing I see is that they're able to come back and share all of that with their parents. And which is, I think, what gives them a sense of not feeling completely lost in this meander. I think that's very important as parents for us to give that space to our children to come back and talk to us and trust us with their deepest secrets, so to say.
Right. Curiosity, creativity, I think all those are such important things. And I see this question, and I also see Preeti. So let me just take this, and I know we are kind of coming to a close. Vanita here says that parenting is joyful, roller coaster ride, and a beautiful experience that we grow more than our child. Our children grow their way, and may be a little percentage is where we contribute in today's world. She's asking, reverse parenting can be a concept too. And I completely say yes to that. So any quick views on that, and then we'll quickly have some closing comments, because I know there were a lot of questions, and what I can take the liberties, maybe send you those questions, and hopefully we can get some more answers. Preeti, you have anything else on mind?
No, that's it. Just inviting all of us to, slowly start closing as the timer is ticking. So Anuradha, bang on spot with your closing words from each one.
Yes. So please let me invite Kiran, your closing thoughts. We've had a lovely conversation, a beautiful, informative, and very insightful. So let me hear from each one of you. I know we are running out of time now, so maybe a very quick closing comment from each one of you.
Yeah, I would just say, listen, find the joy, be kind to yourself, trust the process, and everybody would be fine. That's my go-to.
Lovely. Yeah, Jyoti?
Yeah, so just talking of this reverse parenting, I think that is mirroring back what you've done all these years. And the pleasure of being in this role now with the people who you are so unconditionally attached to, I think is a huge fruit of parenting. And if there is reverse parenting happening, it's a huge positive sign. And yes, it's a journey which carries on. And I think somewhere as parents, keeping that whole factor of redundancy in mind, because I'm going through that phase where now that both my children are, kind of independent and completely on their own, the amount of involvement at various levels has taken a back seat. And this is where to allow that to happen without really imposing is another huge part of parenting, which we need to be mindful of. And it's been a beautiful journey. It's lovely. And this parenting extends, like Anuradha had mentioned in the beginning, not just with our children, like Kiran does it with her students, Abhilasha, probably all of you all do it with your coaching clients and pets and plants. And so the whole concept of parenting is about compassion, unconditional love, listening, and just being mindful of the relationship with the person in front.
Yeah.
I would say enjoy the journey. The time goes by too fast. So make the most of it, right? It's not going to be perfect all the time. You'll make mistakes, and it's okay. We don't want our kids to be perfect people, but what we want them is to be humans. And you're a human too, right? So allow yourself to be that and just have a fun time.
Yeah. And I'll borrow Kiran's words that flawed and awesome. So flawsome is how I see this. And I think there's a huge role of honesty, respect, love, dignity, and vulnerability in this relationship. And I think we just need to be there and enjoy the ride. So beautiful. Thank you so much. Thanks
Thank
so
you.
much for your time and this conversation. I think time has just flown. I was initially worried. I said, what are we going to do for 90 minutes? But 90 minutes have passed. And thank you so much for your time and your beautiful involvement in this conversation.
And thank you so much for this lovely, rich, deep conversation. Anuradha, with your permission, I'm going to read out lines from a poem for all of us, honoring the words that you have shared with us and our lovely audience that has been equally engaged and participative. So here it goes. From our favorite Khalil Gibran. And a woman who held a baby against her bosom said, "Speak to us of children. Your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. They come through you, but not from you. And though they are with you, they yet belong not to you. You may give them your love, but not your thoughts, for they have their own thoughts. You may house their bodies, but not their souls, for their souls dwell in the house of tomorrow, which you cannot visit even in your dreams. You may strive to be like them, but seek not to make them like you. For life goes not backwards, nor tarries with yesterday. You are the bows from which your children, as living arrows, are sent forth. The archer sees the mark upon the path of the infinite, and he bends you with his might, that his arrow may go swift and far. Let your bending in the archer's hand be for gladness, for even as he loves the arrow that flies, so he loves also the bow that is stable. So, wishing us all joyful, stable, and flawsome parenting. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.